Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another De Montfort University live stream. We are today going to be talking about UCAS and personal statements. My name is Ben. I'm part of the school and college team here at De Montfort University. I say here, we're coming to you live from my living room, strangely enough. But we are going to be talking about those topics, giving you some information about what you need to know all about applying to university, writing your personal statement, and all of that good stuff. So thank you very much for joining us on this slightly grey looking, what day is it now? Thursday morning. Lockdown has started to get to me a little bit and I cannot remember what day it is. Good morning to Luke. Thank you very much for joining us. Luke, are you a regular? I think we've seen you before. And we've got MD Jakir. Apologies if I've said that wrong. So thank you very much for joining us. Give us a little wave, say hello in the comments. Let us know that you are watching. Hello, hello. If you can't see the chat at the minute, make sure that you click on the video. There should be a little link that says YouTube, and that should take you through to YouTube. If you have any questions during the duration of this live stream, you can pop them in there and we will do our best to answer them. Now, you will be pleased to hear that it won't just be myself talking to you today. I'm going to need some experts on the topic of UCAS and personal statements helping me out throughout the live stream. So let's get some introductions underway. But as I say, keep those comments coming. Let us know that you're here. And as I say, pop any questions in those chat boxes and we'll do our best throughout the stream to answer them. The first person that I would like to introduce you to, I was going to go straight to Faye first, but it looks like she's maybe somebody's rang the doorbell, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, we'll go over to the man himself. We'll go over to Dal. Good morning, Dal.
Well, you had a great intro lined up for me because you said the word expert. I thought naturally off the top of your tongue, then the next word's going to be Dal, innit?
Of
then
course.
You went to Faye.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know.
Offended, Ben, slightly offended, but
well, you know,
right.
She is the expert. She is the Wikipedia of UCAS, isn't she?
She is indeed. So I want to see everyone @in Faye in the comment section. So any questions that you might have, @Faye is what you need to be doing.
Well, so you say that, Dal, but Dal, you are a self-proclaimed personal statement expert. You've marked many of personal statement in your day. So
yeah, I'll take the personal statements on, but anything else regarding anything else, it's got to be added towards Faye and her delivery, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we can't go to Faye because she's currently off camera at the minute. So we will go to the expert herself in a minute. But if you have got questions about personal statement, Dal's been with us for a couple of years and he's been marking statements for a lot longer than that. So definitely send all your questions over to Dal. We won't go over to Faye, but what I'll do is I'll introduce you to some, I was going to say, newbies to the team. But then again, they've been here for so long, they're part of the furniture at this point. I'd like to first of all introduce you to Tay. Hello, Tay.
Hello, good morning, everyone. You okay?
Yes, we're getting there, How long have we been in lockdown now? Too long.
Maybe 2 years. I don't know at this point.
Maybe 2 years. Tay has stopped counting. So Tay, you are a sort of recent university graduate. You've joined the team, helping people out. So again, if you've got any questions about sort of going through that process, it's sort of semi-fresh in Tay's mind. So hopefully she'll be able to answer questions about that. Similarly, I'm also going to introduce you to Nikila. Hello, Nikila.
Hello, how are you doing?
Yes, we're all good. As I say, I cannot work out what day it is, what time it is. I've been in my house for so long at this point, it's absolutely driven me mad. But again, like I say, Nikila, you are a recent graduate, so hopefully you remember the process like it was yesterday.
I actually weirdly do remember, and I had a look at my computer before we do any of these streams. I still have all of my drafts and my personal statements. I'm refreshed, I'm ready to go, let's do this.
Oh my goodness! So could you could send those over to Dal for some critiquing?
I don't want but this is rubbish. I would have declined you.
Yeah. Well, so what we'll do is we're going to show we're going to show Nikila's personal statement live on the stream later on, and we're all going to critique it together. Is that all right?
GDPR, no, not today.
No, okay, maybe not today, but we'll think about it for next time. Last but not least, we've hyped her up enough at this point. Faye is our UCAS expert, as Dal called her earlier. Hello, Faye.
Good morning. I have no idea what you've been saying. I had to run to get the door for the Hermes delivery lady. I think at this point, we're on, I think, first name basis, first name terms. So practically best friends. She's here every day.
Oh, my goodness. So delivery man has interrupted the live stream today. Maybe we'll get the Hermes. We'll get Hermes delivery man on. They can talk about UCAS as well a little bit later.
Why not?
So Faye again has been part of the team for a couple of years. And she has seen many a UCAS application, and she's been through many a clearing. So any questions about that will be coming over to Faye a little bit later as well, as we kind of go through this process. So we are, as I mentioned before, we're here to talk about sort of personal statements, and we're going to give you sort of advice about that. And I can already see a couple of questions coming through, so we'll hopefully touch on those a little bit later. But as I say, do just keep those coming, and we'll try and do our best to answer those. Now, last time that we did a live stream, I think Dal hosted a live stream, and he did have set us a little bit of a challenge. So I thought I'm going to do something similar today. It's not going to be quite as bad though, I promise. I wouldn't do that to you. But because obviously Leicester is quite big in the news at the minute, I figured we could have a bit of fun around that. And this is where Dal is at a disadvantage here. During the live stream at some point, I want you to give me your best facts about Leicester. So I want you to do a bit of Googling. I want you to find out your best facts about Leicester. And I want to come to you at some point and give us your best fact. How does that sound? Bit easier than the Harry Potter thing? I think we can manage
definitely.
that. I think we can manage that. So Dal, even though he's going to have to get a bit of a head start, is the only person here that doesn't live in Leicester. He's already going to be...
I should be able to answer first because I don't live in Leicester, so I don't know much.
Well, that's a real shame, Dal, because I'm going to come to you
Leicester
first to talk a little bit about UCAS. So you've got even less time to be Googling, because we did have a question before we went live on the live stream from, if I can find it, we had a question from Nadia, who literally, she just posted, she said she just wants to know everything about applying for university. And that is exactly what we're going to cover today. So Dal, I'm going to come to you first. So you've got less time to Google, put you on the spot a little bit. And I want you to tell us a little bit about what UCAS is all about.
Sure. So UCAS stands for University and Colleges Admission Service. So it's like the central hub for all undergraduate UCAS applications. So when you guys are making these applications to university, you'll be doing it through this hub of UCAS. UCAS is just a website that you can access online, and anything that you need to know in regards to universities, in regards to their courses, a lot of that information can be sourced from UCAS themselves. So they have a lot of resources on there, not only for students, but also parents as well. So if your parents have any questions about your journey and your transition into university, they can also utilize UCAS, because I believe there's a parent section on there as well. When you're transitioning, so if you're coming from sixth form, if you're coming from college and you're making that switch into university, it can be quite daunting because the variety of courses that you guys have is so widespread. So in one aspect, it's really good because you do have that wide variety, but in others, when you start the application process and you start thinking about narrowing down your choices, trying to narrow down from 50,000 to 5 can be quite difficult. And the same can be said in regards to choosing your universities, as there's over 250 different institutions in the UK. So all of those applications go directly through UCAS. Just another thing to point you out to, Thomas Cook himself first created his trip, one of his first packages, from Leicester to Loughborough. So Ben, spin on those apples, mate, because you ain't catching me out today.
Oh, he's quick. I will give him that. Well, that's quite a good fact. I actually didn't know that as a Leicester lad.
None of you knew that, and you all live in Leicester. So Thomas Cook, the estate agent man himself, created his first trip from Leicester to Loughborough.
Wow, that's
the 1800s.
That's a real scenic journey then. If you were going to go on your holidays, I might think about going down the road to Loughborough, but there you go.
We'll all be doing that this year, won't we?
That's very true. If anybody does have any other Leicester facts, feel free to pop them in the comments, just to kind of put a bit of fun, bit of spin on this sort of Thursday morning. But yeah, thank you very much for that, for giving us a real kind of top level look at what UCAS is all about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give the rest of my team a few more minutes to sort of Google their Leicester facts, and I'm going to run through very quickly the UCAS timeline. So just to give everybody a bit of an idea about what is going on that side of things, I'm going to put a very quick graphic to show everybody just here. And there we go. So this is the UCAS timeline. So this is really, really useful for you guys to kind of know what kind of stage you are at in that kind of process. So starting at the beginning where it says January to September, that's obviously January to September this year. If you are in year 12, then that is your sort of prime opportunity to do as much research as you can about all of those courses that Dow was just talking about. As Dow said, there are lots and lots of courses to have a look at, lots and lots of courses to choose from. So it is worth taking the time, having a look at the UCAS website and just seeing what kind of courses are out there. Now, obviously, with us being in lockdown, it's very, very difficult for you to be able to kind of get over to those universities and actually visit them for their sort of open days, because obviously the universities are closed. We are planning to do, so DMU are planning to do a sort of virtual open day this coming Saturday, and we'll make sure to pop a link to that in the comments very, very shortly. That's going to be a fantastic way for you to kind of get a bit of a feel for the university, speak to some of our academics, and actually just find out a little bit about the courses themselves with us. And I know that other universities are also doing something very similar in terms of those sort of online platforms, that kind of virtual replacement for the open days. Yes, it's not as exciting as be able to kind of visit those campuses and actually go around and kind of speak to people in person. But obviously, like I say, we're in slightly strange times. So do use these sort of online platforms and these sort of live streams that we're running to your advantage to be able to get as much information as you possibly can. Now, if you're in year 12 going into year 13, your cycle will open in September, and that will be again an opportunity for you to be able to sort of have a look at that and actually start submitting your application online. After that, the next sort of deadline you need to be aware of, if you are applying for Oxford or Cambridge, or if you're applying for medicine or kind of veterinary science, then it might be worth just being aware that your deadline for those courses, because they are quite competitive, is October 15th. Now, that deadline does go to Oxford and Cambridge universities. Sorry, I can't remember if I mentioned that. So just be aware that that deadline is a little bit earlier than the general UCAS deadline, which is in January. Now, the reason that is there and the reason why there's an internal deadline is because a lot of colleges will want those applications a little bit earlier, because it gives time for your teachers and your tutors to be able to kind of submit a reference to sort of support your application, and also submit those sort of predicted grades. So that's why there's an internal deadline, and that's normally before Christmas, because again, it gives those teachers and your tutors a bit of time to sort of sort that. So just be aware of your own internal deadline if you're at college at the minute, so that you know when you need to complete the application. From there, you've got your next deadline, which is in March, and that is the deadline for the universities to get all of their offers back to yourself. So you can make 5 choices on UCAS, which is what we're going to come on to in a minute, but you've got until the universities have got until March to try and get all those offers back to you as soon as they can. And from there, that you're able to make those final decisions come May. And from there, you're narrowing down those potential 5 offers that you receive back from university down to a firm choice and an insurance choice. And as I say, we're going to come on to that a little bit later, but May is when you need to make those final decisions. Obviously, then you've got results day in August, and hopefully all being well, provided you get the grades that you need to get onto the course, you start university in September 2021. So it's not that far away. So realistically, you do need to be using this time to try and plan your application, think about what courses you want to do, and really just kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what kind of options are available. Now, I've talked a little bit about that sort of UCAS timeline at this stage, and obviously now I've kind of mentioned things about the application process. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to the rest of my team, bring them all back in, and I think I'm going to jump over to Faye to talk a little bit about the application process. Is that all right with you, Faye?
Yes.
Perfect. Over to you.
Did you want my Leicester fact first, or do you want it at the end? Do you want me to keep you waiting in suspense?
You can chuck it in whenever you want, Faye. I'll leave that.
Okay, I'll crack on anyway with the UCAS application process, because I guess that's what we came here to do today, to explain that and to see how it works. So you can already create an account with UCAS. So if you haven't done so and you're thinking of applying either this September or even next September, you can make an account with UCAS, register your details. Now, if you are still at sixth form, if you're at further education college, then you will need to apply. When you do make the application, you need to have a username and a password, but also a buzzword, which will be provided by your school or college. So if you're applying independently, then you don't need to have that to hand. Now, with the actual application process itself, you go onto the UCAS website. There's lots of guides on there explaining how it works. It's quite, I think, simple to follow. You have up to 5 choices of either course, well, probably universities. You could perhaps apply to very similar courses at the same university. so it doesn't have to be 5 universities. The same application that you put together, so what course you want to apply to, what you put on your actual written statement about what you want to do and why, is sent to all universities. And now if you want to apply to up to 5, then you do have to make a payment. So the payment is £25, and that's the complete application. If you do want to just make one choice, which you can if you wish, it's £20. But if you just push it that extra £5, then you're going to probably make yourself feel a little bit comfortable having more possibilities of having offers from universities. There's 6 sections to complete as part of your UCAS application form. You don't have to do it all at once. You can log in, log out. It's completely up to you. So you don't have to do it all in one sitting. We need from you your personal details, so your name, your email address, your nationality, things like this. Not all sections are compulsory on there, but we do at least need to know your name and how to contact you. You can also pop in a nominated contact here, so if you want anyone else to be able to speak to universities on your behalf, this is the place where you can actually do that. And some people decide to do that. It depends how comfortable you feel. You're picking up the phone, perhaps speaking to somebody. But there's lots of different ways that you can contact universities. It can be by email. It can be even through WhatsApp, for example. You pop in there your university choices as well as your personal details. Now, these aren't put in order of preference, so we don't know if, for example, De Montfort University is your first choice or your 5th choice, so we keep that nice and fair. So that I think it just goes alphabetically. You also pop on your academic qualifications, so you have your whatever you're doing now or whatever you've done, A-levels, BTECs, access to higher education course, pop in your GCSEs or whatever equivalents you have in there as well. Even if you haven't completed your A-levels, for example, if that's what you're doing, you still pop them in there so we know what you're working towards and what you might have completed once you start university. You can pop on employment history on your form as well, completely optional. But if you want to pop that on there, do feel free to do so. We'll see that as a university and we'll see what you've been getting up to. Something else is a reference. So your reference will be your tutor if you are applying through sixth form or FE college, wherever you're studying, and they'll back up what you say in your personal statement. So what you write to say, why you want to do this course, why you want to come to university. If you're applying independently, then it might be somebody like an employer, for example, who can kind of give a character reference, kind of back up what you've said in your application. So those are really the key 6 sections that you'll need to fill in as part of your personal statement. Oh, and my Leicester fact, I'll just pop that on there as well, is that Leicester actually hosts the largest Diwali celebrations outside of India. So, if you like to party, if you like live music, if you like food markets, then it's a really, really good time to be in Leicester.
That's a good fact. Thank you very much, Faye. Did
you stole my fact?
Dan's trying to get bonus points. Well. He's going to try to get brownie points to give us extra facts. So we did have a question before we went live that might sort of tie into some of the things that we just talked about. This was from Farah. It says, how do you use league tables to inform choices about where to study? Does anybody fancy sort of giving us a quick top line on that?
Yeah, so what I would say first of all is that the institution that I used to teach at before wasn't necessarily high up in the league tables, but the course that I was taught upon, that was quite high. So don't just look at the university in regards to, right, where does that university rank? Look at where that course ranks. So some universities, some institutions might be very high up, but for the course that you want to do, it might be higher in a different institution that doesn't rank in the university league ranking. So always be sure to check both if that's something that means a lot to you in regards to, right, where does a university rank and where does that course rank? But one of the things that I would also recommend you to have a look at is the TEF teaching framework. So have a look, all universities are ranked, it's gold, silver and bronze. So here at De Montfort University, we're ranked at gold. So that just comments and speaks towards our ability to teach in terms of the excellence that we deliver to our students.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Lovely. So I know that another sort of set of questions that we had were sort of surrounding the personal statement. And I think this is the part that quite a lot of students, as you know, we talked about a little bit earlier, this is the part that takes up quite a lot of time and makes up quite a big bulk of the sort of application process. So we've covered, Faye's very kindly covered the sort of the actual application process and how it all kind of works operationally, but we're going to get into some of the sort of more details around the personal statement. So I think we're going to hand over first of all to Tay, just to give us a very quick sort of top line overview of the personal statement. Is that all right, Tay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Ben. So personal statements, it's a very, very big part of your application, especially because, you know, lots of people would be writing this, and, you know, when you send it in, that's kind of the one thing that, you know, the tutors would be looking at that gives so much about yourself, and that's how they will get to know you as an applicant. Remember, you can only write one personal statement. So you would, as you may already know, that you would be applying to 5 different universities, and then all those 5 different universities will be receiving the same application. So make sure that you don't address it to one university like, oh, I really want to come to DMU or something like that. Make sure it's quite general and you're talking about the subject that you want to do. Now, I know some people do apply for different courses at different universities, so you need to make sure it's very course specific, especially since it is going out to different universities. It's an opportunity to sell yourself to universities. You know, it will show a lot about what you do, how you are as a person, and what kind of things that you get up to and what you have done before. The personal statement is mainly there for universities to know why you want to do the course that you want to do and what your motives are, like, you know, why you're passionate about the course that you want to do. Because bear in mind, some subjects are really competitive, and you know, like for example, diagnostic radiography, there's so many people want to do it, but and you know, so many people would probably have the same grades, so they want to make sure that you stand out, what makes you different from all these other applicants, and why you should specifically do that course. And ultimately, they do use this to make a decision. For example, you know, 2 applicants that have the same grades, same everything, but then the personal statement. So if a personal tutor wanted to see who they should choose for the course, they would obviously want to look at a personal statement that's, you know, caught their eyes. If everybody is, you know, writing the same things and similar things, it gets too boring for the markers. So definitely, you know, make it different, make it unique to yourself, but obviously be honest. Also, I think we had a question about what's the word limit or something like that, and it is there. So you are only allowed to have 4,000 characters, which equates to 47 lines. Now, you may think that's a lot of, you know, a lot there to write, but definitely when it actually comes to writing down, it is not a lot. Sometimes you want to mention this and that, which is why, you know, planning it out is very important, and having those different drafts and things, which, you know, the others we'll talk about in a bit, but you only have 4,000 characters, so make sure you are prepared and have an early start when it comes to your personal statement. Oh, my fun fact, I forgot.
Oh yes, we've got it. Let's give us your Leicester fact. Let's go. Let's see what it is.
My Leicester fact is, as a historian, I would say at one point Leicester was the capital of England, this big little island. So we were, during the medieval times, we were the capital of the Celtic tribes.
Oh, very good. Pulling on your history knowledge there. Right. Okay. Nikila, you've got some work to do now. Got to blow me out of the way with your facts. So what I want to do in a couple of minutes is come over to particularly somebody like Dal, who again who's got quite a lot of experience with sort of marking stuff, and get some advice there. But I think what we'll do is, before we do that, Nikila, are you okay just running us through the sort of structure of a personal statement? And I'll put a graphic up for you as well while you do that. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Lovely stuff. So as Tay said, you're going to be writing one personal statement that's going to go out to every university that you apply for. So it is really, really important that you really, really do narrow your personal statement. As we've said before, this is the only personal insight that an applicant, the admissions tutor, is going to be having with your application. So it's the only thing that's going to set you aside other than your entry requirements that you're likely to meet. So first and foremost, I'd say the hardest thing about starting your personal statement is actually putting pen to paper and just really getting going with it. So much in the same way as you would with an English essay that you're writing, plan it out before you actually try and start, because it's so hard to condense everything down to 47 lines. As Kay said, it seems like a lot, but when you start writing, you're actually going to struggle to get it down. So the best way to make sure that you're not creating something that's too long is to plan appropriately. So start with something like a mind map. Maybe if you look at skills that you'd want to mention, or what you think your course would be expecting of you, and then you can match up and say, okay, I've done this, I can demonstrate this by this, and match it up to what you think that the personal statement will require you to include. So best way to start is a really engaging open paragraphs. As I'm sure Dad will mention to you later on, when you're reading several personal statements every day, potentially there could be hundreds of applicants for a course, it can be very boring by the end of it. And it is shocking and very surprising to learn that a lot of personal statements do tend to start with the same, oh, I wish from a very young age I knew I always wanted to study pharmacy. Well, that's a very generic statement and something that anybody could make. It's not personal to you. It doesn't make them see any insight into the course or show that you have a really understanding of the course either. So it needs to be something that's going to make you stand out from other applicants, still be honest, and just show that you really do understand the course. You should next explain your choice of course. So that will allow the admissions tutors to know that you really do understand what you're going to be learning, why you're going to be learning it, and that you have a true appreciation of the course that you're studying. The main issue is that by people having perhaps two applications that they're making, perhaps one for one course and one for another, is that it can be really hard to explain why you've chosen a particular course while trying to explain why you've chosen another course. So do have a look into whether you'd be better off making one application for one course, or whether you really do want to be splitting yourself by having two different applications, because it can be very difficult to try and explain why you've chosen that course and to get that across really clearly if you're trying to do that for two separate courses. You should next be explaining why you're suitable for the course. So if you've done any work experience, any volunteering, if you had employment that makes you suitable for a particular course, that all needs to be mentioned in your personal statement, because that's the only time, unless you're invited to interview, that you're going to be given the opportunity to do this. I will say as well, it's not often common that you get invited to interview for all different courses. It's more for things like healthcare courses, so things like medicine, dentistry, veterinary sciences, those types of courses, nursing, that you're going to be given an interview for. I myself had an interview, but only for one of the universities that I applied for. So it's also not the case that it's common for all different universities. It will vary depending on the university. So your personal statement really is important to just nail and get it as effective as possible. If you're mentioning things like extracurricular activities, things like work experience, if you've done an EPQ that's relevant, if you're a prefect in school, things like if you've done any hobbies, sports, and how that would make you an applicable candidate for this course. For instance, if you, played on your local netball team and that instilled in you team building exercises, and listening to those views that are different to yourself, things like that would all be worthwhile mentioning in your personal statement, things that make you different to every other candidate. Next, you should be concluding your personal statement with your aspirations, your future plans, what you hope to get out of university, if that is a particular career pathway that you have in mind, that this degree will help you to go into, things like that, just to show that you have actually thought about the end game of your degree. Will be really useful for admissions tutors to be reading. We would say it's probably, in terms of the structure, it should be about 2/3 to the subject and how you're suitable, and a final third about any relevant work experience or voluntary experience or extracurricular activities that you've done that would make you a good candidate for the course. Don't be afraid to sing your own praises. It can sound really awkward and almost like you're bragging with your application, but that is what you're there to do. There's no point being humble now. This is the only thing that potentially an applications tutor is going to be seeing about you. So if you are struggling to think about things that make you unique and make you good, maybe sit down with a family member or a friend who knows you really well, who'll be able to perhaps think of things that you might not be thinking of, because sometimes when you're really narrow-minded in something, it can be difficult to look outside your own personal bubble. So by speaking to somebody else, you can get some useful advice. Oh, and in terms of my useful fact on Leicester, Leicester actually hosted the first ever local radio show in the 60s, I believe. So we started local radio.
That's a really good fact. I like that. As somebody that used to dabble in a bit of radio, I'm a big fan of that fact. That's good. I like that. Thank you very much. I'll have to think which fact I liked the most, unless anybody can think of any others. I know Dan is raring to find some facts. He's well into his facts and hidden trivia. Good for a pub quiz is our Dal. Before we go over to some do's and don'ts, Dow, I do actually want to come over to you and just kind of get your sort of top line advice as well, like some of the things that you've seen, some of the sort of reoccurring issues, and then I'd like to come to the rest of the team and sort of again just kind of think back to when you wrote your personal statements, and how you found it, how you sort of tackled it, what were the biggest hurdles to come over. I know mine again was not leaving it until the last minute because I'm super lazy. Don't do that. Best advice is go in there, draft as much as you can and get started on it early, which is why you've got a bit of time now during lockdown to do that. But yeah, Dow, some sort of advice from yourself, I think.
The first thing that I'd say is that when you're, as Nikila mentioned it earlier, so an admissions tutor, we're human beings, and I feel like people often forget that. And what I mean by that is if I was to ask you as a student, right, read 20, 30 different statements back to back to back, I can guarantee you one of the first things that you guys will probably be thinking is, you know what, I can't be bothered to do that. And sometimes we do have the same approach, so we are human in that nature, so we don't always sit down and look forward to reading statement on statement on statement. So what I'm trying to get at, when it comes to you writing your personal statement, it needs to really catch our attention. There's been countless times that I can remember myself personally, when I'm marking or when I have been marking, if that first paragraph, if those first couple of lines didn't catch my eye, I genuinely wouldn't read it, because in my head I'd look at it and think, right, I've got over 150 statements to read here, I've got 50 spaces to fill, I'm sure to find those 50 students out of those 150 spaces, and if I didn't, I'll just go through the rest of the ones that I didn't read. So capturing that reader's attention is important. Something else that Nikila picked up on was that a lot of students start with these cliche phrases of, for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to study nursing. So again, something like that I would strongly recommend you to avoid, because a lot of students out there are utilizing those types of phrases. Instead, what you want to be doing is starting by demonstrating the knowledge that you have. Where or what do you know, of the field that you want to study? So if it is nursing, what does the field of nursing mean to you? Because if you can encapsulate that in one or two different lines, you're then able to jump straight into three things that I'll strongly recommend you guys to surround your personal statement around. And that should be around your academia, so your education, your employment, and your social. So say, for example, if you start with an opening statement around, right, the field of nursing to me is, explain that, it bridges nicely into the next part of your work, which should be around your education. So during my BTEC level 3 extended diploma in health and science, I learned XYZ. So what we're starting to do now is putting it all together, and we've done so without utilizing that phrase. So really strongly recommend you to be very creative with your opening. One more thing that I want to just quickly mention is that a lot of students, because you only have 47 lines to write, so a lot of students would usually try and cram in as much information as they possibly can, because they feel like the more they put in, the more we'll be impressed. My advice to you would be avoid making sentences such as, I have strong communication skills, personal working with a team, and great cooperation skills. So we've chucked 3 skills into one sentence, but we haven't actually demonstrated where those skills have been developed and where they're applicable. So for me, what I would always recommend you to do, think beyond the common skills that students are going to use. You can guarantee you a lot of students are going to utilize or suggest those skills within their personal statement. So go a bit deeper. I do not believe for 1 second that students only have communication skills, problem solving skills, working in a team. These for me are secondary skills. There's a lot more that we want to know as university admissions tutors that you guys would have picked up from your A levels or your BTEC, or from your work experience, or from your social settings if you've done any volunteering, because you would have developed some serious skills and characteristics that we would be interested in regards to it being applicable to your field. And just to finish off on that Luke Burdis question, so there is no, so Tay correctly said that there is no, Tay correctly said, that there's a maximum word count. I've completely lost my train of thought, of 47 lines, which is correct, but there is no minimum word count when writing your personal statement, but you shouldn't be in a position where you do not maximize those 47 lines. So there is no minimum word count, but when you are writing, when you are thinking about all the different skills, qualities that you guys have done, you shouldn't be struggling to fill those 47 lines if you're explaining it and linking it to the course where applicable.
Yeah, if anything, you're gonna, first couple of drafts, you're gonna be well over, really, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thinking back to your days when you were marking, Dal, I've never asked this question, but I've always been curious. Do you have one that really always kind of stood out to you for some reason? Like one that was like your favorite?
Yeah, I do actually. So what we had to do, yeah. And I usually get asked this a lot. So what I picked on nursing because it's the one that sticks in me. So what we had to do, we had to mark on the course that we taught on naturally, but we also had to second moderate as well. And that was completely random. And that was just a test that our moderation was accurate and it was fair. And there was this one student, their opening was what I was just explaining. And she was one of the only people that attempted it that way. So she didn't start with no cliche opening. What she started with, the knowledge that she actually got. And she was speaking directly towards the curriculum. And I had never, ever, when I look back to myself of writing, I don't know about you guys, I didn't think about doing that. And what she'd done, which was very clever, was she spoke about the curriculum in her opening. But the way that she'd done it, she presented it through her A-levels that she was studying. And that for me has, even though I didn't teach in that subject, but that's the one personal statement, even to this day, it's probably been about 4 or 5 years since I read it. It still sticks with me today.
I think that's really interesting, again, because if you didn't study on that particular subject, or you didn't teach that particular subject, but if that course, that personal statement stood out to you and you remember it, Dal, I think that goes to show that it was pretty quality personal statement there. Absolutely.
Yeah, because it was approached so differently, because I think students are tricked into believing that, you know what, you all have to follow the same structure. You all have to write, I'm going to write about my education here, I'm going to write about my employability here, I'm going to write about my hobbies and interests here, I'm going to write about my future at the bottom. So they become carbon copies. And this personal statement didn't follow that approach. Yes, she still spoke about those different sections, but the way she had put it together, it just naturally stood out because everyone had written in that regimented way of writing.
That's cool. Thank you very much. Faye, some advice around sort of personal statements from yourself? Anything you can think of that Dal's not touched upon?
Yeah, I think you might find that some courses want you to have work experience, or it might just say that it's beneficial. And just really to touch upon the fact that we understand at the moment with, you know, COVID-19 happening, that it might not be a possibility when you're making your applications. We don't know what's going to happen. So there is going to be some flexibility. So if anyone's worrying about that, we completely understand. We know that there's going to be restrictions. But you can demonstrate lots of other ways in which you understand what the course entails, or if you've got to do placements as part of your course, you know, what have you learned about the course? How do you know how to prepare for the kind of placements that you would do? You know, what kind of wider reading have you done? It might be that you even, you know, haven't done that course before at university. So what do you know about it? Why have you chosen it? Surely you've read something, or you've listened to some kind of TED Talks, or I don't know, something that inspired you to go down that path. So if you can't perhaps lean upon work experience, start thinking outside the box. Have you looked at, you know, have there been any talks, say through De Montfort University, that have made you really intrigued in your particular subject? Or it might be another university, and that's helped you to then go, oh, okay, I didn't know that was part of the course. That sounds interesting. I'm going to go and read something and explore that further. So these are all the things. Yes, you can talk about what you've studied and what you've learned in your studies and how you've picked up lots of transferable skills. But we also want to know that you have, you know, an idea of what the course entails, and that you have done your research, even if it's from your home and you can't go outside right now.
Thank you very much for that, Faye. Yeah, that's definitely worth knowing. There's quite a lot of websites. Like there's one that I've got bookmarked at the minute that I did sign up for called Skills Share, where you can learn lots of new things on there. I mean, that might be something else as well if you're looking to get into something that's got a specific skill around it. I know they do quite a lot with things like, you know, computer programming stuff, because that's stuff I'm interested in. So have a look, see if there's skill service websites like that you can have a look at. And as Faye just said, you know, TED Talks and stuff are also really, really good. But absolutely, universities are going to be a little bit more flexible with some of their requirements at the minute. So definitely don't let that worry you too much. I'm going to come to a couple of the questions in a second, but I would also like to just go again over to Tay and Nikhila again. I'll start with Tay. Tay, can you think back to when you were sort of planning your application and writing your personal statement? How did you sort of approach that, and how did you find the sort of drafting and the planning process?
Yeah, I actually quite found it difficult because I was actually stuck between two subjects that I wanted to study. So I was stuck between English and history, and I love them both. Like I did them throughout, school, college, and everything. And I just didn't know which one to go to because I chose both of those subjects because I didn't want to go into a specific career path, and I knew that these two subjects would have lots of transferable skills which I can take into any kind of career. So for me, what helped me was writing two different drafts, and that honestly was the best decision that I made because when you write two different drafts, you can really see why you want to do that, but each of those subjects, and you can see, why you're more passionate about one and the other. And also it helps when it comes to, the end when you want to submit your application, because in the end you can only submit one of those. So I had two different drafts done, and then in the end I chose what I wanted to do. So neither of the subjects were my parents' choices. They thought I could have done, Asian parents could have done another subject, but English and history not in their radar. But in the end I went with history, and I think that was the best decision that I made. And when I look back at it, definitely writing two different personal statements helped me. And another thing is also get your friends to check for you. English is not my first language, and I'm not very confident when it comes to writing. So I did. My friends had to check for me, and it helps because when you're reading two different personal statements so many times, it confuses you, and sometimes you might not see what other people can see. So definitely, if you need to write two different personal statements, and get it checked by your friends and family or whoever that can help you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And that does answer a couple of questions that we had. So before the stream, we had somebody who was asking, it was Joe, how do I approach my personal statement if I'm interested in two different subjects? And then more recently, we had a comment on YouTube that says, how can I decide one course between two of my favorites? That's a very good way of actually tackling that particular situation that Tay's just said. You've got to make sure your statement is strong in one of those subjects. So doing two different statements is a really good way of handling that. I noticed that my team have just said we've not had any Leicester facts just yet. Dal, have you got another Leicester fact for us?
No, I'll bring the Leicester fact in the next section, but don't you worry. It's all up here, mate. Not just
all
the pretty face, me.
Did Nikila bring us one?
Nikila has, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she did. Nikila, I know we've covered quite a lot. We've talked quite a lot about personal statement, and this is the bit that quite a lot of students are worried about. But do you have any other bits that you want to mention around statements before we move on?
Yeah, definitely. So for myself, I think I had the opposite view to Faye. I actually chose a really, really specific degree. So I did a degree in optics. So for me, what I needed to prove in my personal statement was that I actually understood what a career in optics meant. Whereas history and English, it's more, do you understand the subject? So for me, I started my personal statement with a paragraph which showed that I actually understood what a career in optics would mean, because it was very much, you do this degree, you become an optician. Whereas I think a lot of people had like misconceptions about what the degree meant in terms of the career. So for me, I think that my main strength in my personal statement was that I showed that I actually understood what the career meant. So I'd say if you are doing like a career specific degree, then show that you actually have an understanding of the career itself, rather than, oh, I think this might be good for me to study because it will make my parents happy, or I think it's going to earn me lots of money. You need to show that you understand really what the career actually entails.
Perfect. I think that's a nice way to sort of end on with personal statements. But if we do get any more questions through, we'll try and do our best to answer those at the end. I think we're just going to end on a couple of do's and don'ts from Dal. Before we do that, David Watts has posted a quick sort of DMU fact. Did you know that Bob Marley played at the Students' Union on the Catch a Fire tour in 1973, which is quite a cool sort of claim to fame there. So there you go. Bob Marley played in our very own Students' Union, probably not the building that exists right now, but the previous Students' Union. So that's cool. Very, very cool. Right, over to Dal to talk a bit about the sort of do's and don'ts before we finish off on personal statements. And I'm sure he'll chuck in a Leicester fact as we go. So Dal, over to yourself, mate.
No pressure there. So do's and don'ts, well, do's. So one of the first things that we obviously advise you to do is be prepared to write it several times. Now, I remember when I was writing my personal statement draft, I thought it was pretty bang on the first time I wrote it, and I was pretty reluctant to redraft it because in my head, I thought, you know what, this is absolutely bang on. one of the major problems that I kept having, and I still have today when I'm writing, is that when I reread my writing, I read in my mind. So I'm reading to the tone that I had written, if that makes any sense to you guys at all. But when you actually read your writing out aloud, you can pick up on the mistakes, because in your mind, you've read to the tune in your mind. Again, that made sense to me, probably made sense to some of you. I apologize if it didn't make any sense to anyone out there. Also, one thing that we recommend is the ABC method. So it's very similar to what I was saying earlier in regards to make sure you give some depth and explanation. So first of all, you need to be thinking about the activity, think about the benefit and how does that relate to the course, or it could be translated to skill, experience and relevancy, something that was a bit easier for me to get my head around. Always ask for feedback, so always speak to someone who's within the field, but the only watch out here is don't get too many people's opinion on it, because what will happen is that you may get too many cooks in the kitchen. One person will probably tell you, right, keep it in. Another person will probably tell you, you know what, take it out. You're then left with the dilemma, who do I listen to? So just to make it easier, just select a couple of people that you really trust, probably your careers advisor and someone who's within that field. Look at the UCAS website, look at university websites for any hints and tips that they can give you. Make a mind map. So I know Nikila in our team absolutely loves mind mapping, and it's a great way to put all your thoughts down on a piece of paper. But one thing is a watch out is when you're writing it, please make sure you write in a structured way, so you don't want your ideas jump from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. You can write directly on UCAS's website when writing your personal statement, but we always advise to use Microsoft Word, so you avoid the spelling mistakes, and make sure you keep it relevant. So you might have done some stuff in year 9, you might have done some stuff in year 8, but always try and include, because you only have those 47 lines, to make sure you're writing something that is more relevant and more up to date. One of the biggest temptations is, because you're applying to a university, is to use terminology that you might not be familiar with. Now, as a reader, there's been many a time I've picked up a thesaurus to understand, right, how and what do you mean by these certain words. We don't know all the words in the world, so please only use terminology you're familiar with, because if that isn't consistent, it really does throw out the flow of your personal statement and the structure and the way that you've written. And be positive. So be positive in the way that you write. So I think it was Nikila or Tay mentioned something around selling yourself and really showing off and really putting those skills down on the piece of paper, but make sure it comes across in a positive manner. And when you guys do decide to come to DMU, please do check out Leicester's outdoor market, because it is one of the largest in Europe.
What a great segue into your fact there. Thank you, Dal. Thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions come through about personal statements. We will tackle those in a second, but I'm going to take Dal away from the screen, give him a breather, let him find some more facts, and we're going to go into some don'ts, and then we'll sort of tackle one or two more questions at the end. So sort of to tie it all off then, there are lots and lots of resources online, as Dal said, and the temptation potentially is to use examples or to use templates or to copy from somewhere else. Remember that this personal statement is very much personal. It is very much about you. So do make sure that you are completely writing from your own perspective, and do make sure that this is all entirely your own work. Obviously, it's good to look at examples to see what does work, but do make sure that it is entirely your own work. Now, this is going to tie into a question we're going to tackle in a second as well. Don't lie or exaggerate, as you will or you could get caught out when it gets to the application. So all of the stuff that you need to include in that application needs to be, again, it needs to be stuff that you can back up, you can reinforce. There's no good just telling us that you did X, Y, and Z if you're not going to kind of give us that evidence or give us that backup for it. And it might be for some of you, when you approach that in the personal statement, you might then be asked to talk about it a little bit at interview. So there could be situations where you are then talking about that sort of work experience or talking about that situation that you were in later on down the line. So again, you need to make sure that you've got the evidence to sort of back that up. Dal's right, definitely use that sort of positive language, but avoid using sort of informal language. It's still a sort of professional application that you're writing, but it still needs to be very personal. So again, you don't need to be kind of pulling out all the big guns and pulling out all the big words. You've just got to make sure that it makes sense, that it's sort of semi-formal, and that you are able to kind of articulate what you're trying to say. I think we've gone on about cliches. Dow hates a cliche. Try and avoid them as best you can, because again, if we've heard one, we've heard it 100 times. Tay mentioned earlier as well about avoiding making it sort of specific to one institution. Again, simply because, and again, this does tie into a question we had earlier, can you write 2 different personal statements for 2 different courses at 2 different universities? The UCAS application process, so the 5 choices that you put on your UCAS application, it's just the one application, the one personal statement that goes to all 5 of your choices, which is the reason why we say you need to try and make sure that your courses that on your application sort of line up and are fairly similar, so that you're able to write a statement that is going to reflect that. So you need to try and make sure that while you're not making it specific to one institution, you're not putting, I want to go to DMU because, but also your application is going to, you know, Loughborough or Lincoln or wherever. You do need to make sure that it is covering and ticking all the boxes for the courses that you have chosen. And finally, try not to rely on spell check. It is important that you obviously are actually spell checking your work, but don't rely on the spell check in Microsoft Word. As we know, we can trip it up with a few grammar mistakes. So always, in sort of tying into what Dan just mentioned, get feedback from people, get people to read it, just get them to look at it, even if they don't know anything about what you're trying to apply to, even if they don't know anything about, you know, pharmacy or nursing or biomedical science, just get them to look at it from a sort of structural standpoint, from a spelling standpoint, or from a grammar standpoint, just so that you know that it is the best it possibly can be. I figured that I've asked all my colleagues to put in a bit of a Leicester fact today, so I will chuck one in as well. Leicester is the home to the biggest crisp factory in the world, according to the website that I'm looking at, and it's the Walker's factory, Walker's Crisps. They've been frying potatoes in Leicester for 71 years, and it is literally just down the road from where my parents live. So I used to have to drive past it every morning on my way to school and on my way to work. So yeah, that was my Leicester fact, to add that in as well. Okay, what have we got next on the agenda? Just having a look at a couple of the questions that we've had through, just to make sure that we are covering everything. Bella has said, apologies, I live near a busy main road. Bella has said, how do we make sure that we still have things to talk about in our interviews that we haven't already talked about in our personal statement? So any advice around sort of interviews in regards to this?
I would say personally, when I had an interview, they actually asked me more obscure questions than I thought. So for mine, for my degree in optics, they actually weirdly asked me a maths question just to throw me off, I think, just to see how I went with it on the go, which was fine. And then they didn't really reference my personal statement massively. They more just asked me to expand upon what I'd already mentioned. They're very much aware that you have a limited character count in your personal statement, so you can maybe mention something briefly. But if you are having an interview and they refer to things in your personal statement, they'll just say, oh, you mentioned that you've done work experience in X, Y, and Z. Can you tell me what you learned in there? What was the worst experience that you had? What was the best experience that you had? They also strangely gave me a model of the brain, and they said, okay, where's the visual cortex in the brain? Things like that. They asked me more in-depth questions related to actual topics that they thought that I should have an understanding in, rather than things that I would mention in my personal statement. So don't worry too much, and also don't go with the assumption that you will have an interview necessarily, because you don't want to not mention things that make you a good candidate in your personal statement and then never get invited to interview because you've not given a full representation of who you are. So try not to worry about it too much.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other points on that? All good. Cool. So let's try and get through the last couple of points that we've got. Again, I'm conscious of time, and I know we've had a couple of questions come through. Faye, so once the application has been submitted, we've completed that personal statement thanks to all the fantastic advice that you guys have provided. We've submitted the application to our 5 universities. What happens next?
So UCAS sends a copy of your application to all your chosen universities, and then they will assess your application. Now, they'll all get to it at different stages. It might be that one university has received more applications so far than another university, So don't panic if you hear back from one before another. Universities may request, it depends on the course, they may request you to come to interview, they may request a portfolio from you, they might want you to do some checks, so they'll let you know what needs to be done next. If you haven't, you don't need to do an interview, you don't need to submit a portfolio, then it might just be that they send you an offer. So UCAS track will be updated regardless. So that's what happens. And then it goes on to, I guess, kind of what kind of offers that you might receive from the university.
Perfect. That was nice and quick. Could you very quickly just run us through the types of offers that students can receive?
Yeah.
I don't mind who does that. Oh, sorry, this is Tay's point. Sorry, I'm reading the part of the
That's okay.
Tay, very, very quickly, because I know we're conscious of time. Let's see how fast you can blast this out. What are the types of offers that students can receive?
Yeah, so the first offer that students can receive is a conditional offer. So, if you've met, once you have firmed your choice, and you would be given a conditional offer, as long as you meet those conditions, for example, get those grades on the results day, then you'd be able to go to the university and study there. The other one is unconditional offer. Now, lots of students like to hear about this unconditional offer. It means, even if you might still hold that place at the university, but remember, you want to do great at your in your exams, because these marks will carry on when you go into the workplace. For example, when I go for interviews, they will still ask me about what I got for A levels, and they might talk about what subjects I did, and they carry with you. So definitely do well in your exam, even if you have received unconditional offer. The other offer would be an unsuccessful, which basically means you didn't get into that place for whichever reasons, like you didn't meet the grades, you didn't pass the interview. Again, so that's the unsuccessful. The other one is the alternative cost offer. So you might get a cross offer from the university. For example, the university might have not thought that you weren't as good for diagnostic radiography, but they think that you'd be more suitable for health and life well-being. So they might give you that alternative course offer. And now with these offers, once you receive those, you can either firm them. So that would be your first choice, and then you can make them either insurance. So if you didn't get into your first place, firm place, you can have that as a backup plan. And then the last one is a decline. You can choose to whether you want to go. If you don't want to go to that university. The deadlines have already been done for obviously next year. Once you have made your choice, the universities will be in contact with you, and then you can start your process into actually moving to university and registering.
Oh my gosh, really put you on the spot. You absolutely blasted through that. I think that's going to be a challenge for our next live stream, is how quickly can you explain UCAS in 30 seconds?
Do I speak really fast? I'm sorry.
No, that was good. That was good. Because we are just tying off some last little bits that we want to talk about. I think the last thing that I do want to very, very quickly touch on then is sort of clearing. So this is the last sort of possible option. So UCAS Extra and clearing are the last possible ways that students can sort of get those offers if they're sort of late into the cycle. So Faye, can I jump over to you to talk about the very, very last topic in our live stream this morning?
I'd say I'd think about it, but I guess we're short on time, so okay, no problem. So I guess clearing, if you're looking particularly for, you don't have a course right now, for example, we actually open for clearing on Monday, I believe it is, Monday the 6th. If Monday is the 6th, I'm not sure even what month we're in right now. So we're open for clearing. So if you haven't perhaps applied to university yet, give us a call, WhatsApp us, email us, however you want to, get in touch, however you feel comfortable. Official clearing is usually in August on A-level results day. So I think the Thursday, the 12th-ish of August. So universities will pop into clearing at different times. So if you are interested, you haven't yet made an application for this year, then you can give us a call and we'll discuss options with you. For everybody else, if you're holding an offer already and you're quite happy with that, but things don't quite go to plan when it comes to your results, then you might be dropped into clearing. So clearing is your opportunity to look at other universities, to look at what they offer, to see what the entry criteria is, and then start making some alternative plans if you still want to go to university but might have to go somewhere else. Thousands of students go through clearing every year. Sometimes people even just change their mind about what they want to do. It's that can happen if you've had a complete change of heart. maybe you were just picking what you thought would be best for your career and perhaps not what you enjoy, then think about clearing. Just generally have a chat with us. We can always talk you through your options, find out what is the best decision for you. So, if you want to go through clearing, you need to refer to UCAS as well. So there's lots of good information on there as well. And if you do get an offer through clearing, you will need to add that to your UCAS track. So it's kind of all confirmed in all the right places. So that's kind of clearing in a nutshell.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much. So that is the end of all of our kind of specific topics. I'm just going to make sure that we've covered all of the sort of individual questions that came through today. I know we had a couple a little bit earlier on from Shivran and Satish. They've both asked questions that we're not going to be able to cover today because obviously they're covering slightly more sort of personal specific issues. But if you go over to, if I can find the link, if you go over to this link, I have popped it in the comments, you will be able to have a chat with one of us and we'll be able to kind of have a little dig around and we'll be able to see if we can find some more specific information for you. Obviously, we talked quite a lot about the personal statements today, so hopefully that was all very, very useful because a couple of you guys were asking about things to do with picking a statement between two different courses. So hopefully that was really, really useful for you when we talked about that a little bit earlier. I know, Tay, that was something you struggled with. So best advice is try and write two, and then obviously try and steer it more towards the course that you think you're going to choose. And I think that was all the questions that I could see that we haven't sort of touched upon. So thank you very much for joining us. Do you guys have any more Leicester facts tucked up your sleeves that you want to chuck at me, or are you going to save them for a later live stream, do we think? Leicester
City Women's Football Club is the oldest women's football club in the UK.
Oh, Dan, I just, when I said, has anybody got any facts? I did look at Dan and go, I bet he's got one. Like I say, Dan is good for a pub quiz. He's just full of just weird and interesting facts. The one that I've just seen, and I still don't know whether this is true, is apparently Leicester has more traffic lights than any other city in the UK. Now, I can believe it. Driving through the centre of Leicester, there are quite a lot of traffic lights. It's a bit of a nightmare. But yeah, I've just seen that pop up again, and I thought that was an interesting fact. So we'll end with
definitely true. They're always on red when I need to go through them. But on a positive note, students generally don't bring a car to campus.
This is very true.
They are pedestrians, so it's a very, very safe city for students. And also, you can always seem to cross the road whenever you want to because there's that many traffic lights. Yay!
That's very, very true.
Great for you.
We'll end on Dow's fantastic football story and my really boring traffic light fact. But thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. Hope you found that useful. You've got some information about UCAS. We are running an open day on Saturday. It is very, very imminent. We're all a little bit stressed about it, but it's going to be absolutely fantastic. It isn't going to be on campus. It is all virtual. So you can stay in the comfort of your home in your PJs and you can just watch all of our live streams. You may even see some of our faces crop up in some of the live streams that we're running. So do come along, check that out. You can book on now. We'll send you a little goodie bag and you'll get lots and lots of information about the different courses that we have on offer. We are continuing to run live streams during the duration of this lockdown. So again, we're trying to provide you with as much information about things like finance and personal statements as we have done today. So that is definitely worth checking out some more of our live streams for the future. And there are some Facebook groups that you can go to. And again, the links for those are in the Facebook group. And again, I know that some of you have posted some quite specific sort of conversations and specific things that we need to, that you're asking about. Definitely go back and find and I'll post this link again because it was a little bit further up. The student chat is going to be one of the best ways to get in touch with all of us on this screen. Tay and Nicola do actually work in our sort of inquiries and admissions line. So if you've got any questions, do send them their way and they will do their best to see if they can answer for you. Luke has put a chat as well saying, I generally thought Red Leicester cheese was made in Leicester. I think it was founded in Leicester. I don't know if it's still made in Leicester. I'm not aware of any local cheese factories. Maybe I'm wrong. But there you go. Red Leicester cheese, another Leicester claim to fame. And there is also lots and lots of resources on the website coming out through the open day. So if you are unsure about anything else, do check that out over there. But that is it from us. We're going to go and sort some stuff, have some lunch. Hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon and we'll see you in the next live stream. Take care, everyone. See you later.